The investment Warren Buffett made when everyone else was selling in September 2008. The financial world was falling apart. Banks were collapsing. Billions of dollars were disappearing. Stock markets were crashing. Television channels were broadcasting panic 24 hours a day. Investors were terrified. Some people were watching their life savings disappear. Others were selling everything they owned. Nobody knew how bad things would become. Nobody knew who would survive. And in the middle of that chaos, one man did something that seemed completely insane. He started buying, not selling. Buying. While everyone else was running for the exits, Warren Buffett was moving in the opposite direction. The question is why? Was he reckless? Was he gambling? Or did he see something that everyone else was missing? To answer that question, we need to understand something important about Warren Buffett. You see, Buffett wasn't simply an investor. He was a student of human behavior. For decades, he had watched people make the same mistake again and again. When prices were rising, people became greedy. When prices were falling, people became afraid. And fear changes the way people think. It changes the way people act. It changes the decisions they make. In fact, during a crisis, people often stop making decisions entirely. They simply react. And that reaction can be incredibly expensive. Buffett understood this long before 2008. For years, he had been preparing for a moment exactly like this. While other investors searched for excitement, Buffett searched for opportunity. While others chased trends, Buffett studied businesses. While others focused on today's headlines, Buffett focused on long-term value. And when the crisis arrived, he was ready. But even Buffett could not have predicted how dramatic the situation would become. Lehman Brothers collapsed. Markets crashed. Fear spread everywhere. Some investors believed capitalism itself was failing. Imagine opening your phone and seeing red numbers everywhere. Every stock falling. Every headline negative. Every expert predicting disaster. That was the environment. That was the mood. That was the fear. Most people couldn't think clearly. Buffett could, because he understood something that changed the course of his life. The stock market is not a machine. It's a collection of human emotions. And when emotions become extreme, opportunities appear. While millions of investors were asking, "How much more can I lose?" Buffett was asking, "How much value can I buy?" Those are two completely different questions. And the answer would eventually make him billions. But here's the part most people don't know. Warren Buffett wasn't acting on courage alone. He wasn't blindly buying stocks because he felt optimistic. In fact, he was terrified too. The difference was that Buffett had spent decades preparing for moments like this. Years before the crisis, he had built a habit that almost nobody else was willing to build. He trained himself to think independently. That sounds simple. It's not. Because human beings are social creatures. When everyone around us is doing something, we feel pressure to do the same. When everyone is buying, we want to buy. When everyone is selling, we want to sell. The crowd feels safe, even when the crowd is wrong. Buffett understood this better than almost anyone. And he knew that extraordinary results rarely come from following the crowd. In fact, some of his greatest investments looked terrible at the time. People criticized them. Experts questioned them. Journalists doubted them. But Buffett didn't care. Because he wasn't trying to be popular. He was trying to be correct. And during the financial crisis of 2008, that mindset became one of the most valuable assets in the world. While fear dominated the market, Buffett began studying companies. Not stock prices. Companies. Their cash flows. Their products. Their customers. Their future. Because Buffett had learned something important. A great business does not become a bad business simply because people are afraid. Fear can destroy prices, but it cannot destroy value overnight. And that's exactly what he was looking for. Value. The problem was that almost nobody else could see it. Investors were glued to television screens. Every headline was worse than the last. Every day brought new uncertainty. And uncertainty is uncomfortable. People hate uncertainty. The human brain would rather have a bad answer than no answer at all. So people sold. They sold because they wanted certainty. They sold because they wanted relief. They sold because everyone else was selling. Buffett watched, waited, and then he acted. One of the most famous examples was Goldman Sachs. At the time, confidence in the financial system was collapsing. Many people believed major financial institutions might not survive. The risks looked enormous. Yet Buffett invested billions, not because he knew the future, but because he understood probability. And that's another lesson that made him different. Most people want guarantees. Buffett never had guarantees. He made decisions based on odds, based on logic, based on evidence, not emotions. And over time, those odds worked in his favor again and again. Now imagine how difficult that must have been. Imagine turning on the news and hearing predictions of economic disaster. Imagine friends telling you you're crazy. Imagine experts warning about catastrophe. And then imagine investing anyway. That's not easy. That's not comfortable. That's why so few people do it. Most people want success. Very few people are willing to feel uncomfortable enough to achieve it. Buffett was. And that's why he became Buffett. But here's where the story becomes even more interesting. Because 2008 wasn't the first time he had done this. For decades, Buffett had been making the same bet. Not on stocks. Not on companies. On human nature. He understood that people tend to overreact. When things are good, they become too optimistic. When things are bad, they become too pessimistic. And somewhere in the middle lies reality. Buffett built his fortune by searching for that reality, again and again. While everyone else was focused on emotion, he focused on value. While everyone else watched the crowd, he watched the business. While everyone else chased excitement, he pursued patience. And patience is a difficult thing to sell. Nobody wants to hear that wealth might take decades. Nobody wants to hear that success is slow. Nobody wants to hear that the most powerful force in investing is time. But Buffett knew it was true. And because he knew it was true, he behaved differently. He wasn't looking for a quick win. He was building an empire one decision at a time. Years passed. The crisis faded. The economy recovered. The companies Buffett invested in survived. And many of them thrived. The investments that looked reckless to the crowd became some of the most profitable decisions of his career. The same people who questioned him began praising him. The same media that doubted him began celebrating him. The same decisions that looked foolish suddenly looked brilliant. But they weren't brilliant because Buffett could predict the future. They were brilliant because he understood something most people never learn. The greatest opportunities often appear disguised as fear. And that's the truth he knew. Not a secret stock. Not a magic formula. Not insider information. A truth about human behavior. A truth about patience. A truth about discipline. A truth that remains just as valuable today as it was in 2008. And perhaps that's why Warren Buffett became one of the wealthiest investors in history. Not because he was fearless, but because he learned how to act while others were controlled by fear. And maybe the next great opportunity in your life won't arrive wrapped in certainty. Maybe it will arrive wrapped in doubt, wrapped in discomfort, wrapped in fear. The question is, will you recognize it when it comes? But there is one final piece of this story, and without it, none of Buffett's success makes sense. Because after 2008, something strange happened. The crisis ended. Markets recovered. Fear disappeared. And almost immediately, people forgot the lesson. They went back to chasing quick profits, back to chasing trends, back to believing that wealth could be built overnight. It was as if the entire world had watched the same movie and learned nothing from it, except Buffett. Because Buffett wasn't reacting to a crisis. He was following a philosophy he had spent decades building. You see, most investors spend their lives looking for the next opportunity. Buffett spent his life becoming the kind of person who could recognize opportunity. There is a difference, a huge difference. One approach depends on luck. The other depends on preparation. Imagine two people standing in the same room. The same opportunities exist around both of them. The same economy, the same information, the same world. Yet one person sees possibilities. The other sees obstacles. Why? Because opportunities are invisible to people who are not prepared for them. And Buffett prepared himself every single day. For decades. Reading, learning, thinking, studying. Not because he knew exactly when an opportunity would arrive, but because he knew it eventually would. And when it did, he wanted to be ready. That mindset changed everything. Most people ask, "How do I get rich?" Buffett asked, "How do I become more valuable?" Most people ask, "What's the next big opportunity?" Buffett asked, "Am I prepared when it arrives?" Most people focus on outcomes. Buffett focused on process. And over time, the process created extraordinary outcomes. Now think about this. Warren Buffett became a billionaire, then a multi-billionaire, then one of the richest people in history. Yet if you look at his daily life, it doesn't resemble the lifestyle most people imagine. He still spends enormous amounts of time reading, thinking, learning. Why? Because the habit that built his fortune never changed. The money changed. The habit didn't. And maybe that's the biggest lesson hidden inside this entire story. People often want the results without adopting the behaviors that create the results. They want wealth without patience, success without discipline, achievement without sacrifice. Buffett understood that life doesn't work that way. The rewards come later. The habits come first. Always. And perhaps that's why so many people misunderstand him. They see the billions. They don't see the decades. They see the fortune. They don't see the thousands of quiet mornings spent reading. They see the success. They don't see the preparation. But preparation is where the story really begins. Not the money. Not the fame. Not the headlines. The preparation. Because when the financial world collapsed in 2008, Buffett wasn't suddenly brave. He wasn't suddenly wise. He wasn't suddenly disciplined. He had spent decades becoming those things. And when the moment arrived, he simply acted according to the person he had already become. That is why he succeeded. And that is why his story still matters today. Because this isn't really a story about investing. It's a story about thinking differently. It's a story about remaining calm when everyone else is emotional. It's a story about preparing while everyone else is distracted. And it's a story about having the patience to wait for the right opportunity, rather than chasing every opportunity. That's the truth Warren Buffett knew. The truth wasn't hidden. The truth wasn't secret. The truth was simply difficult. And most people prefer easy answers. Buffett preferred true answers. And over a lifetime. That difference made him one of the most successful investors the world has ever seen. If you enjoyed this story and want more deep dives into the decisions, habits, and moments that shaped history's greatest investors and entrepreneurs, make sure to subscribe. Leave a like if you found value in today's video. And tell me in the comments, if you had been standing in Buffett's shoes during the 2008 crisis, would you have had the courage to buy while everyone else was selling? Thank you for watching. And remember, the crowd is often loud. Opportunity is often quiet. The question is, which one are you listening to?